All right, well, hello everyone. I'm Brie'el Wiles.
And I'm Samantha. For our presentation today, what we did is we analyzed a female soccer player's nutrition, and we're going to show you kind of how we did that, and then hopefully you'll learn some health tips along the way.
Okay, so we're just going to start with what is the importance of nutrition on sports performance. So the main thing is that the calories you consume provide your body with energy. That's the main thing. To help you get through, just walking to class, going to soccer practice, it's just your main source of energy. So we're going to go into greater detail about calorie consumption and calorie expenditure. So all that is how much calories you're consuming throughout the day and how much you're burning. We're going to compare those. Your diet helps with delaying fatigue, and it also helps with keeping your mind sharp and focused. And what I mean by that is when you ingest carbohydrates, they're broken down into glucose, and then your brain uses glucose to think, and glucose is used to allow your body to function and perform. And the last thing that we want to talk about is that's going to help prevent muscle degradation. So if you're not consuming enough calories, your body is going to look for other energy. So what it's going to do, it's going to break down your muscles, convert that into energy, and this can lead to poor performance, injury, and stuff like that.
Okay, so the methods for our project is that we followed a single subject for a period of 3 days and had her record her nutrition and activity log. And we used different websites for each of these. We'll show you what they were later. And then after receiving her log, we calculated her total energy expenditure and calorie consumption, and then compared the two. And then we analyzed her macro and micronutrient intake through the MyPlate website, and then also assessed her fluid intake. And then after all of this, we gave her some recommendations based off of her health goals.
Okay, so this is one of the main websites we use, and it's just MyPlate. And what it does is it just helps people make healthier lifestyle choices. And it also is very educational, allows you to log your diet, it assesses it for you, and it is very educational. So we're actually going to show you an example. This morning we just logged Sammy's breakfast and lunch on MyPlate. Okay, so then they have these tabs up at the top, but we're going to go into the super tracker. I have to log in. And another cool thing is that Michelle Obama is an activist for diet and exercise in America, and she has a couple movements that she's doing right now to help with kids staying healthy and active as well. And you can also download the MyPlate app, and the app will allow you to put in the food that you're eating, log your exercise, and then it'll show you what's how much calories you're consuming and how much you're spending. Okay, so we're just going to go in already. We already did an example. So this is what she's already eaten today. So it's really cool. So it'll show you, we logged that she had an English muffin for breakfast with peanut butter on it and a yogurt. And then it'll show you how much of your percent of your grains, your dairy, and your protein that she's already consumed today. And it'll also tell you how many calories each food is, and then tell you how many empty calories is in that food. So empty calories are basically calories that have no nutritional value whatsoever, so you want to stay away from those. And then, so this is just showing what she's already at today. And then we also took the time we're going to look at her micro and macronutrients, and this is what we use to analyze if she was under or over in certain food types. Okay, so then just looking at these, you can see what she's under in, but I mean, even calories right now, she hasn't eaten dinner, and then you can see, there's certain things right now she's under in protein and carbohydrates, but she'll probably meet those by the end of the day, but she's already over in her total fat and saturated fat, and she has eaten It's mainly from like mayonnaise and cheese. So it's just, you gotta pay attention to what you're eating.
Okay, and then next from her activity log, we used two different websites. The first was this compendium website, the top one, and the second was the Nat Illinois website. And we found that the Nat Illinois website was very vague and it wasn't as reliable because compared to the compendium website, you could only pick light, moderate, or heavy activity, while the compendium gave a specific MET for that activity. So the compendium gave us a more accurate number for her calories that she was expending during physical activity. And we're going to show you what that is. And then just as an example, right now, as you guys are resting and sitting here, you're at about 1 MET. So the more intense your activity is, the higher your MET value will be. So just as an example to show that you burn METs doing anything, we'll scroll down and you can see that even styling your hair is at 2.5 METs right here. And then if you go back, you can pick, let's say you went on a run today, and it gives specific miles per hour that you were running. So the faster you go, the higher your MET value is.
Okay, so let's get on to our subject. So she was a female collegiate soccer player on the Adams State women's soccer team. At the time she was 20, and these are just her body composition values. So she weighed about 67 kilograms, that's about 5'4" in height. Her percent body fat was about 18 and her BMI was at about 25. And we're going to go into detail of what these values actually mean.
Okay, so females are supposed to have a body fat percentage from 20 to 25. And of this, 12% is essential body fat. And our athlete was at 18.75%, which is below the average. But since she's above that 12%, it's actually at a healthy range. And then males are at 15% average, and they only need 5% essential fats. And their percentage is her percentage is actually lower than females because females need a higher body fat for reproduction. And then lastly, for BMI, our athlete fell in the slightly overweight category. And we found this to be highly inaccurate because BMI does not separate lean mass from fat mass, and since muscle weighs more than fat, it kind of skewed the scales a little bit, so BMI isn't typically used for athletes.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about fat distribution. There are several ways that fat is distributed, but I'm just going to talk about two. So android is more typical in men, and this is when your fat is stored more in your trunk and your abdomen. And there's an increased risk of chronic disease with this because of where the fat is being stored. It's actually being stored around the internal organs, and then it can actually go into the internal organs, which causes the higher risk. And then the other one is gynoid, and this is more common in females. It's where it's more stored in like your hip and thigh area, and it's considered more pear-shaped. And this is considered a healthier distribution. But there is a disclaimer with this. This is talking about a healthy level of fat. If you have an excess amount of fat, either of these are going to cause an increased risk of disease. And then we also looked at the waist to hip ratio. So males is slightly higher because you guys are slightly broader than women. But our athlete fell at 0.75, which puts her significantly under the 0.86, which just means that she's at a decreased risk for chronic disease, so she's in a healthy range there.
And then our athlete had a goal to maintain proper weight to optimize her performance, but she also wanted to lose 5 pounds to become more lean. Her body fat percentage is already at a good level, so she doesn't necessarily need to lose the weight, she just wants to. Some ways to change her habits in order to lose that weight is we recommended that she only lose 1 to 2 pounds a week. And this is because if you lose too much weight too fast, your body will break down your muscle tissues rather than just fat tissues, and this could cause a disruption in her performance. And then we recommend that she increase her exercise activity instead of going on a heavy diet. We also recommend that she does self-monitoring, so kind of like we did with our study, she kept a log of her nutrition and activities. She could continue that to monitor herself. And then in order to lose weight, she needs to be at a negative energy balance, which means that she's expending more calories than she's consuming. And then the last point is that our athlete at this time was during her competitive season. We recommend that she wait until her off season to lose the weight so that it doesn't disrupt her performance.
Okay, well, soccer, as you guys know, is a team sport, and your diet depends on what type of sport you're playing. So for team sport athletes, most of their calorie consumption should be from carbohydrates, about 55 to 60%. And this is mainly because carbohydrates is what fuels the body and it provides energy. So this is where they need to be consuming most of their calories. And then the next one is proteins, which is about 15 to 20%. And I mean, in season, you're weightlifting, you're going into tackles, you're running, you're just constantly tearing your muscles. So protein will help rebuild your muscles back up and allow muscles to grow. And then the last thing is fats. And most people are like, oh, like athletes shouldn't be consuming fats. And it's like, well, yes, they should. Playing a contact sport, you need extra cushioning around your muscles, your internal organs to prevent injury. And it's just an extra, it's more for protection and shock absorption and stuff like that. So to help with like impact.
Okay, so we entered in our athletes' age, height, and activity level on MyPlate, and we got that she was allowed to consume a total of 2,600 calories a day. However, this might be a little low because MyPlate sets a limit at 1 hour of activity a day, and since she was playing soccer at the time, she's working out more closely to 2 hours a day. And then the average from the 3 days that she logged, we found that she only consumed 1,781 calories, which is significantly lower than her allowed calories. However, we thought that this number is also low because MyPlate is very specific and it's hard to measure how much food you're eating. It was because you choose like how many ounces or grams, and our athlete probably didn't have a scale to be able to do that. And then through the nutritional report, we found that she was under in vitamin A, D, E, K, and C, as well as choline, calcium, potassium, and iron. And we talked to her about the term that was eating the rainbow, which means that she's eating all the different colors of different foods to be able to get more nutrients from them. And then she was also under in dietary fiber, as well as linoleic acid and linolenic acid, and these are your essential fatty acids right here. We also discussed the option of our athlete using supplements to get the appropriate amounts of vitamins and minerals, but then we found that supplements are often more expensive than real whole foods, and they oftentimes have more than the essential value. So what happens is you intake it and then you excrete it, so it's oftentimes wasted. So we recommended just using whole foods instead.
Okay, and this is just continued. So she was over in sodium and saturated fat, which is pretty common for the natural population. But I mean, looking at sodium, you'd think, well, wow, you know, that might be a bad thing, but it's not, because when you're exercising at such a high intensity or you're out in the heat, you're constantly sweating and you're losing all of these electrolytes. So I mean, yes, she's over, but it's not necessarily a bad thing because she needs to replenish all those electrolytes lost during the activity. So we suggested that instead, you know, of having tortilla chips and other things like that, to just substitute with sport drinks and stuff right after activity. And then for saturated fat, we just was telling her to stay away from more of the processed foods and snacky type stuff.
And then after we looked at her food, we analyzed her water intake. Based on her age and activity level, she was supposed to be drinking 4.48 liters a day, but she was actually only consuming 4 liters a day. However, this 4 liters is just through liquid water alone, so she might be actually consuming more through foods such as fruits and vegetables, which also have a water content. So she's probably pretty close to her recommended fluid value. And then just some important functions of water, again, is to stabilize body temperature. while she's working out, her core body temperature is rising, so it's important that she has enough water to be able to sweat throughout the whole activity so that she can cool her body off. And then water also helps to distribute nutrients and hormones, immune cells, and oxygen throughout the body.
Okay, so then here's our nutritional tips to her. So we just suggested that she substitutes whole grains for refined grains. And this can be through breads and pastas, and it actually will say it on, the food that you're buying, it'll say refined grains on there. And then we also suggested that because she's so low in all those micronutrients that were listed, the vitamin A, D, E, K, all that stuff, most of these micronutrients you get from fruits and vegetables. So we said, you're gonna go to the market, we suggest go right to produce and get a fresh piece of fruit. But if not, you can go frozen, and then if not, you can go canned. And the reason we say, let's not go canned is because usually it's in syrup, and syrup has a lot of sugar. And as well, the same thing with juice is, some people, I don't like drinking water, and I'm a little bit lactose intolerant, so I don't drink milk. So it's people will resort to juice, but you need to go to 100% juice because that's also loaded with sugar as well. And then she was under in vegetables just in general. So we just suggested that she takes snack size bags to class and eats them in between class and stuff like that. But to incorporate dark leafy greens, which will help with her micronutrients she was low in. And then beans and peas are really good for fiber because she was under in that as well.
And then the other tips that we had to do with dairy, oils, and protein. Dairy is important for calcium and bone strength, especially for athletes. And some ways she could get dairy is through fat-free and low-fat milk because you help get the calcium without the added fat. And then oils, this is the essential fatty acids that we were talking about that she was low in. And this is just another way, the healthier way to do this is through vegetable oil or butter with 0 trans fat. And then finally, protein, again, is important for muscle growth and repair for athletes. And during her food log, we saw that she was eating a lot of chicken, but it's important to incorporate other meat types in that. So red meat, including beef, and then fish is important because it'll help boost her iron and other vitamins and minerals that she was low in. And then the other thing that was important is to select lean meats or cut off the fat from the edges.
Okay, so how did we even figure out how much energy she was expending throughout the day? So we had 3 different things we were looking at. First, we were looking at physical activity. And this is not just running at soccer practice. This is any type of daily activity. This accounts for about 15 to 30% of energy that's expended throughout the day. And the next thing we looked at was the thermic effect of food, which all this means is how much energy it takes to digest your food in your small intestine and stomach like that, and that takes about 10%. And then the last one, which accounts for a majority of it, is 60 to 75%. And this is just your resting energy expenditure. So this accounts for calories burned when your heart is beating, when your lungs are breathing, when neurons are being sent to your brain, just a lot of different things, even your urinary tract. There's just so many things that resting energy expenditure accounts for. So what we did is we calculated each of these with several different equations to figure out how many calories our athlete was expending each day.
Okay, so from those 3 things, we calculated how many calories she was burning in each category. So this value we got from the compendium website, and from the average of 3 days, she burned 2,285 calories just through physical activity alone. And you can see that game day is a lot higher than a travel day, so it just depends on how active you are on that day. And then the Harris-Benedict equation is our resting energy expenditure, and we found that she was burning almost 1,500 calories alone. And then the thermic effect of food was 178 calories, which we thought was a little low, and this is probably because since she's not eating enough, her metabolism is slowing down. And then her total daily energy expenditure we found from adding the averages of these 3, and that was at a whopping 3,962 calories, which is a lot higher than what she was actually consuming.
Okay, and so then we just took the amount of calories she consumed and minus how much she burned and figured out that On travel day, she was in a positive balance. And on game day and practice, she was in a negative energy balance. And for an athlete who's trying to lose about 5 pounds per week, we suggest that she be in a negative about 400 to 500 kilocalories a day. Because what happens is when you get into these large deficits, the body metabolism slowing down and it's actually storing fat. So because she was so active, it didn't show a huge difference in her body weight. But to lose the weight that she wants to, she needs to be closer to a positive energy balance or closer to the 400 to 500 negative.
And then this is the last slide we have, just so you know. Our subject overall, again, had a weight loss goal of 5 pounds. She was in a negative energy balance, but it was too big of a deficit. She needs to eat healthier foods and incorporate snacking to increase her metabolism. She should reduce her saturated fat and sodium consumption and drink just a little bit more fluids to ensure that she has enough to cool her body during exercise. And then she should increase her vegetable and fruit intake to make sure that she's getting all the nutrients that she needs. And then finally, we talked about her iron intake. An athlete living and performing in a high elevation environment like Alamosa, iron is especially important for hemoglobin formation. So you need to have the right amount of hemoglobin to transport the oxygen to your working muscles. So since she has an iron deficiency, she probably doesn't have enough hemoglobin to transport the oxygen that she needs. So that could be a detriment to performance as well. Any questions?
So I was just going to ask, like, you were talking about the vitamins and the difference between taking supplements versus just natural food.
Yeah.
Is there an established sort of efficiency with which they're absorbed, depending on whether you're taking supplements or whole food?
I don't think so, but the point with the supplements is it has a higher value than you really need, so you're kind of just wasting the other half of the
Okay, so you might
supplement.
get it, but
Yeah, so like Whole Foods can provide the vitamins that you need, and usually there's a total amount of each type of vitamin you should be taking a day. And if you're going above that, you literally just excrete it. So it's like you're paying for a supplement so that your urine's really expensive, is what it really comes down to. So there's a certain amount when you need it. It's like, yeah, it's kind of gross, but that's how I thought about it. So.
So you mentioned MET. You said what it was, but what does it stand for? Anything?
Metabolic
So what the MET is just like, I don't know how to define it. Okay, so each activity has a different intensity, and each MET explains basically the intensity of the activity. So like if you're brushing your hair, it's probably at like a 1.5, but if you're running at a 6-mile pace, then it's probably closer to like 11 or 12. So we used those values and plugged it into a formula to figure out how many calories were being expended for each activity. So we did that with every single activity. Came down to like, how long did you brush your teeth this morning? Oh, I might have cheated a little bit, maybe a minute 30, and then we'd have to plug that in and then figure out how many calories are expended that way.
And then the METs were plugged into an equation that factored in how long you were doing it and what your body weight is. So a person who is heavier is going to burn more calories performing the same activity as a person who is lighter.
Mm-hmm.
would that have certain weighting towards that type of activity, like if you're overweight brushing your teeth versus light brushing your teeth?
It takes into a tiny,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
The bigger the MET, the bigger the difference will be with that.
yeah.
Okay.